We're swallowing flakes and burning allomantic metals. That's right! It's Mistborn, the deck building game from Brotherwise Games. In this declared deck builder, 1 to 4 players take on the role of characters from Brandon Sanderson's epic Mistborn book series. I love it and you're gonna love it. If you haven't read it yet, what are you doing with your life? Over a series of turns, players strategically build their own personal deck of cards, utilizing allies, hunting enemies, hiring mercenaries, and crashing through windows. Setup begins with character selection. Each player chooses a character card, which includes a name, wicked art, and 3 abilities which are unlocked at various stages of the game. Along with the character card, each player takes a training track, a training cube of their chosen color, placing it on the first step of the track, 1 of each medal, placed on the marked spaces above the training track, and a health dial. Each player also creates their starting deck, comprised of 4 starting cards, marked with their character's name in the bottom left, and 6 funding cards. They shuffle these together and place their deck to the left of their character card. Next, shuffle the market deck and place it center. Reveal the top 6 cards in a row nearby to form the market. Shuffle the mission cards and reveal 3 at random, removing the rest from the game. Each player places a tracking cube of their color on the right side of each mission card. Create a supply of boxings and ATM tokens nearby. Select a first player for the game who will take the first turn, followed by players around the table in clockwise order. The first player begins the game with 36 health, the second player begins with 38 health, the third takes 40 health, and the fourth player also takes 40 health, but also takes 1 boxing and the target standee. In a 3-player game, give the target to the third player. In a 2-player game, don't even use it. To start the game, each player draws a hand of 5 cards from their personal deck. Let's look at the components and mechanics more closely. A player's training track provides a number of benefits, which the player gains once they reach the marked space. For instance, at the start of the game, the player may burn 1 medal per turn, but when they reach the 4th space, they can burn 2 medals per turn. 3 spaces on the track correspond to the character card abilities, which are unlocked once their threshold is reached. Next, medals. There are 8 primary medals in the game, each paired with 1 partner medal: pewter and tin, bronze and copper, zinc and brass, and iron and steel. A player has 1 of each medal, though they can gain a powerful 9th medal, ATM, via certain game effects, including some spaces on the training track. Unlike the primary medals, a player can have multiple ATM tokens at once. Let's look at the cards. Players start the game with 2 types of cards in their personal deck: funding cards and training cards. A funding card provides 1 coin, which can be used to purchase cards in the market row. Each card in the market has a coin cost in their top right corner. When purchasing a card, the player takes the new card into their personal discard pile. This will be later shuffled into their deck. After purchasing, the space in the row is immediately filled with another market card. The player can purchase as many cards as they wish in a turn, provided they can pay those costs. Any unspent coins from cards are lost at the end of a player's turn. Alternatively, a player can spend 2 coins to gain a boxing, which is a 1 coin token that carries over between turns. It can be spent on a future turn for a coin, returning the token back to the supply. Training cards have an ability on the bottom left and a medal pairing on the bottom right. The abilities always need a medal to be burned in order to activate them. When playing the card, the player also takes an available medal token from their training track, matching the listed medal, and places it on the card to activate the ability. This is known as burning a medal. At the end of a player's turn, the burned medal returns to the player's training track for use on a future turn. Remember, a player can only burn 1 medal per turn at the beginning of the game, but as they progress in their training, they'll be able to burn more. However, players can also use action cards as medal to power other cards using the medal pairing icons on the bottom right of a card in their hand. They play it underneath the played card turned sideways, which fulfills its cost with one of the matching medal icons. One major bonus of doing this, using a card doesn't count against the player's burn limit for the turn. There's also no limit on the number of cards that can be used as metal each turn. A couple other metal burning concepts. Flaring. While a player can only burn metal tokens each turn equal to their burn limit, they can flare an available metal token if needed. They flip the token to its darker flared side, empowering the card as usual. However, when it returns to a player's training track, it stays on its flared side, unable to be burned in the future. This doesn't count against the burn limit. Refresh. A player can make a flared metal available again by refreshing the metal on their turn. They discard one card from their hand into their personal discard pile, then flip a flared metal token, which matches a metal on the discarded card's bottom right, back to its normal side. Some game effects, like this symbol, also allow a player to refresh a flared token for free. After refreshing, the token can only be used if it wasn't burned or flared on that turn. Atium. Once acquired, these powerful metals can be burned as any metal for the purpose of activating abilities. Once used, Atium tokens are returned to the supply. They're one-time use only. For this reason, they also can't be flared, and they do count towards a player's burn limit for the turn. Atium cards can be used to power any card or to refresh any metal token. The market deck contains two main card types: action cards and allies. Action cards have a name, cost, which is the number of coins a player needs to acquire it from the market, an ability or abilities with an associated metal. Second icons require multiple metals of that type to be burnt, either through cards or Atium, and a metal pairing to be used to power other cards. Some of these also have a savant ability, which triggers when the card is used as metal, but not for its main abilities. Some cards also have an effect that can be activated on an opponent's turn by discarding it from a player's hand, no metal burning needed. Ally cards are horizontally oriented and when played, stay in play until defeated by another player. They're not discarded at the end of a player's turn like most cards. Each has a name, cost, a defense value, an associated metal, and effect. This effect activates once per turn when that metal is burnt, as either a token or card. Some allies have effects for burning additional metals or ongoing benefits. Okay, now that we've covered cards and metals, let's finally talk gameplay, which occurs in turns. On a turn, the active player proceeds through a number of steps. First, they increase their training value on their tracker, gaining any benefits listed. Then, they play cards from their hand into their personal play area, resolving effects by burning or flaring metal. They also activate abilities and buy cards from the market. Once they resolved all their cards, they then attack allies, followed by attacking other players. More on that in a sec. To end their turn, they discard any cards in play except allies and all the cards in their hand into their personal discard pile. Finally, they draw a new hand of 5 cards from their personal draw deck, and if their deck is ever empty, they shuffle their personal discard pile into a new draw deck, cycling their newly purchased cards into their potential card pool. Let's look at combat. If at any time a player's health pool, tracked on their health dial, reaches 0, they are removed from the game. One great way to eliminate your opponents is to damage them, represented by this symbol. As the active player plays cards on their turn, they total their damage. Once they hit the damage allies step, they can apply any of this damage to any opposing allies in the game. If an ally takes damage equal to or greater than its defense value, it's moved to its owner's discard pile. After resolving any damage they wish to assign to allies, they may then use any remaining damage against one player, the holder of the target. After all damage is resolved, if the player with the target took any amount of damage to their health, they're allowed to pass the target to another player of their choice. Some notes on the target: a player can choose not to apply their player damage, forcing the target to keep it longer, perhaps for a more damaging turn soon, or if the active player didn't want to receive the target themselves in retaliation. Some allies have the Defender ability, which means they must be defeated before damage can be applied to their owner. If the player with the target is eliminated, the attacking player can move the target to another player and carry over remaining damage. The target only exists in a 3 or 4 player game, otherwise the target is always your opponent. This includes when a multiplayer game is reduced to 2 players through elimination. If the active player has the target, after attacking allies, their full damage value is applied to every other player at the end of their turn. If an opponent has a defender ally, the equal damage is dealt to their defender first. One other important mechanic: the missions. Each of the 3 missions in a game have a name, reward for the players completing it, placement for the order in which players complete it, including a bonus for the first player, and a track with rewards, including those for each player and those for the first player to reach that space. Players move their cubes onto and up the track 1 space for each game effect that gives them a mission point, noted with this page icon here. If they gain multiple mission points in a turn, they can spend them on 1 track or split them between several. Gameplay continues with players burning medals, attacking opponents, summoning allies, and eavesdropping at parties. A player can win the game in one of 3 different ways. If they reach the top of all 3 mission tracks, they win the game. If they eliminate all other players, they win the game. Or if they acquire and use the full effect of the confrontation card, they win the game. And that's the basics of Mistborn, the deck building game. In addition to rules for a solo mode and co-op mode, the rulebook contains a handy listing of the metal effects and an Allomancer's trove of strategy tips. I'm Becca Scott, this is Good Time Society, and you should try to eat a healthy breakfast of bronzed eggs, pewter powdered pancakes, and a glass of zinc. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and come on back for more great games and good times. Bye-bye.